Thanks for joining me late in the afternoon. I appreciate the time. My name is Rick Tam Daniels. I'm the Global Vice President of Ecosystems and Technology. So what that means is me and my team are responsible for our product and go-to-market strategy with our key ecosystem players like Databricks. So we do a lot of work at events like this, understanding what you guys are looking to do with Databricks and making sure we bring that back and make sure our products are supporting the right kind of journeys and capabilities that you guys want to see. So before we get started, I do like to get to know everyone a little bit. So how many of you are familiar with Informatica? Just show of hands. Okay, pretty familiar. How many of you are current Informatica customers? Awesome, well, thank you all. How many of you are using our cloud platform? Okay, a few folks in the back, awesome. You guys should be up front, like, come on. So anyway, so today's session, I'm gonna be talking a lot about what a lot of folks aren't aware is that we've invested a lot in becoming cloud native and bringing our entire portfolio to the cloud, right? And having as a service offerings around all aspects of data management. So we're gonna talk a little bit today about how those different capabilities manifest around Lakehouse to help enable you to take your data assets and turn them into usable, trusted data that you can deliver at scale. So a couple of things up front. I think hopefully everyone in this room is pretty aware of this, but the data challenges keep growing. Every year they get bigger and bigger. There was an IDC study we commissioned last year that said that something like a third of organizations have more than 1,000 sources of data that they want to tap into. And the vast majority of organizations are at least 100 or more. So that's a lot of complexity when it comes to understanding and getting access to even your existing data landscape. Second challenge is that the data environments have gotten more complicated as well. 82% of organizations are multi-cloud now. Right? They have installation on different clouds, they have on-premise. The data is not only in silos, it's actually distributed, and it creates additional technical challenges to get access to that information. At the same time, the demand for data keeps growing. This has been the case for the last decade or so. Every year, more and more demand. And this is an incredible statistic for me. It's estimated there are 500 million business data users out there. When you think about the population on the globe, that's an incredibly large percentage of folks who are looking to work with data on a day-to-day basis. The challenge is that a lot of analytics projects are failing to deliver value, or a lot of analytics architectures are failing to deliver data to the end users, to the consumers. And a lot of the reason why has to do with data management challenges, which is what we are squarely focused on addressing to help you guys be successful with data and analytics. So when we talk about what those data challenges are, this is my favorite way to describe what Informatica does, right? We have a lot of capabilities. It can be a bit overwhelming on the platform technology side, but I always like to think in terms of what's a logical journey that a user needs to go on to get their data from where it is to where it needs to be in a form that can be usable. And this does require connecting a community of data professionals. And hopefully these roles look pretty familiar to all of you, that almost every organization has folks. You have folks in IT or ETL developers, you have data stewards who are looking after, chief data officer looking after data governance, data engineers, data scientists, and actually line of business consumers as well. Citizen data integrators, citizen analysts, all those roles have to participate and want to participate in this ecosystem of data in your organizations. And the first challenge in the journey when I think about, hey, I have a use case I need to address for the business, I need some data, I need to make some decisions, I need to know what's going on. First step is, well, how do I even begin to find the data I need, right? I've got 1,000 data sources. How do I make sense and catalog all those data assets, but not just catalog them, but actually do so in an intelligent way that makes it feasible for me to find customer data or product data and not have to know what the underlying systems are. So one of the things I'll talk about quite a bit is we've invested a lot to bring the power of machine learning and AI into data management, right? So using AI as an enabler, as an accelerator, and one of the great examples of this is cataloging, where we go out and we scan data, we classify data by business meaning, right, and business domain. We have a whole bunch of out-of-the-box classifiers, which means that your time to find data is at least an order of magnitude faster, right? So it's an incredible accelerator there. The second piece is, great, well, I've found my data assets, I've explored what's out there, and now I need to get it out of where it is. So do I have the right connectivity to access the data in that system? It's a big strength of Informatica, as I think most of you probably know that well. More than 200 different types of connectors that we provide today. And then in the addition to that is saying, well, great, I've got the data out, but I need to take it somewhere. I need to take it to, say, Databricks, Delta Lake on Databricks, and I need to bring the data there quickly. Do I have the right connectivity from Informatica there? And this is where we invest very heavily and have engineering teams that just focus on the Databricks ecosystem to ensure that we're using the best-in-class connectivity, we're delivering data in a really efficient and performant way. So we found the data, we got it out of where it is, we got it where it needs to go, it needs to the Lakehouse. But is this data trustworthy? Is it usable? Do I have quality issues I need to identify and fix and resolve before I can deliver this to the business users to actually perform analytics with it? So data quality and cleansing is a big focus for us. When you think about analytics, most analytics today, you want to look at the core entities in your business, right? Your customers, your products, your suppliers. If you're in healthcare, it could be patients, providers. But in today's world, that fragmented view, who your customer is more fragmented than ever before. Right, so how do you make sense of all that overlapping and conflicting data to kind of get to the version of the truth that, again, it's a solid foundation for analytics. And this is where data mastering and master data management, customer 360 is another area. Finally, governance. Governance is a super hot topic, right? As you start to proliferate data, create democratization on analytics, it's, well, how do we know that folks are using the right data? Where did this data come from? Where's the veracity of it? How do I ensure I'm not duplicating tons of data over the organization and creating even worse siloed problem or bigger fragmentation problem? And this is also an aspect of cataloging, but it goes into mapping the technical world to the business view of the world and applying data management policies. I'll talk a little more about governance in just a second. And the last mile here is, how do I get the data to the end users? And really this concept of sharing and democratizing data, Informatica now offers what's called the data marketplace. And it really is designed for the enterprise. So it's your internal data with all that rich contextual data we discovered in the catalog, we applied the quality rules, we understand is it good or not, we understand what it means to the business, getting all that into a shopping experience that actually then ties together the owners of the data with the data consumers. So when I need to access that data or I need to have questions about it, I can go and communicate directly with data stakeholders without having to have IT involved in every request. So it's an incredible part. If you're looking at things like data mesh, it's a really important capability to make data mesh actually scale. Okay, and this is what our platform looks like. So this is called Intelligent Data Management Cloud, right? That's our platform, and it's as a service offering. It's available on all major clouds, and every one of those components I talked about in the journey is a microservice. So these are different services that you can pick and choose and basically create very complex data supply chains very quickly. Right, so a lot of this is very much visual, it's drag and drop, you're not writing code, which also helps with reuse and repeatability and scaling of it. And one thing I'm not going to talk about today's session, but we did announce and talk about when I posted a blog post about this week, is we are bringing what's called InfoCore to market. And InfoCore is basically taking these capabilities that have typically been a no-code experience and actually bringing them to the notebook, right? So taking libraries for Informatica connectors, for transformations, for data quality functions, and making them available to your data developers as well. So providing one common foundation of reusable components that really helps you scale. I mentioned that AI layer. Again, we call it Claire, but Claire is really a collection of multiple techniques and assistive technologies. So I mentioned one when it came to data classification. We also have ones where we can recommend data quality rules, or when you're building a mapping, we've seen millions and millions of mappings, right? So we've taken that kind of metadata intelligence and baked it in to say, look, in this data source, we commonly see like 80% of customers want to use this other next stage. Do you want to use this step to transform next? So we're trying to, again, in today's world with all that complexity and scale and growth, without assistive technology, it becomes really, really difficult to manage and stay on top of this and maintain it. So AI is an incredible enabler for all the data professionals that are working with data and analytics. Okay. So let's talk about Delta Lake specifically and Lakehouse. So there's really 4 key components I want to talk about when you think about as you're implementing a Lakehouse that address those challenges. So the first is, how do I get my data in, right? And we've got 2 big paths here and options. Well, first is called cloud data integration. Think of this as kind of classic ETL, but it also does ELT processing. And the way this works is we're actually using Databricks SQL today, which is a really performant, good cost optimized way of getting data into Databricks very quickly. But in addition to landing the data from those 200 different source connectors, we can actually take your transformations, your visual mappings, and push them down as SQL statements that run in Engine, right? That are taking advantage of the power of the Databricks SQL engine performance. And again, I'll talk a little more about what that actually looks like from a comparison perspective. But again, this is more for when you're doing kind of row by row processing, you're transforming data on the way inbound. Then we have it called cloud mass ingestion. So these are cases where you just want to take data sources and just dump them in there, right? Just take it as is, get it in there as fast as possible, and then we're going to do ELT processing again through that cloud data integration engine. So these are both, what's a very common pattern is CMI to load, and then CDI to transform and manage the data. And apologies, I'm going to use acronyms, so hopefully you guys can keep track of all of them. But for those of you who are Informatica customers, you've probably heard a lot of these. The other element here is data cataloging, right? So we're able to not only, so we're basically able to scan all the data, and our view of cataloging is that Informatica looks to be the catalog of catalogs, right? We recognize that the Unity catalog, there's been a lot of conversation about that this week, that's a great catalog, great metadata inside the Databricks environment, but we're trying to look holistically, right? Across your on-premise, across multiple cloud, all the way from source to consumption, right? So we're scanning BI targets, and we're getting full lineage across that. And obviously the lineage from our transformations is very straightforward, but we look at third-party lineage as well. And one of the big things we implemented last year is actually notebook parsing. So we can actually go into the code and infer lineage from your notebooks as well. So you kind of get a really complete, holistic view of what data is going where. And then we layer on our governance on top of that. We're looking at taking that technical view of the world. And again, we're applying a business-centric view of it. So for your business users, your data stewards, you can look at it from a data element perspective. What does this data element mean to the business? And is it a high-impact data element? Is it one that I have to be concerned about from a privacy perspective? Is it PII data? So we provide all that intelligence in the governance layer to ensure that, again, you have confidence in the data assets that are being delivered. But it also creates this veracity and trust so that really encourages your actual line of business folks to pick up this data and work with it. Okay, so just a little more detail about cloud data integration and mass ingestion. So we want to pick the right tool for the right use case. So when it comes to cloud data integration, the way it works is we connect to a data source, we introspect the metadata of the data source. Again, we can extract from those 200 different sources out of the box, which, again, building connectors to sources, it is a dark art. It is not easy, right? So it's a lot of investment energy goes into doing this, and it saves you a tremendous amount of time. So it's really designed for this row-by-row processing, as I mentioned, and we can either transform data as we're moving it, or we can do this kind of push-down processing. And one thing I'll show later is one unique aspect of our architecture is that we're able to have a lot of flexibility of where the compute actually runs and bring it close to the data, keep it in your security context, and that uses what we call the secure agent. So the product itself is managed, it's SaaS, it's a web-based user experience, but it gives you a lot of control, especially for multi-cloud distributed processing. We can manage all those different kind of workloads very easily. The other option is, of course, doing push-down optimization directly into the ecosystem, where we're pushing down complex transformations as SQL statements. So in mass ingestion, which is, again, extract, load is kind of the pattern here. It's very similar to replication. You think about change data capture, replication, that's what mass ingestion is focused on. There's 4 patterns. There's database mass ingestion, which is really kind of change data capture. There's file mass ingestion for loading different unstructured formats into the data lake. Streaming and application ingestion. So again, these are designed for cases where you're not doing any transformation, you're just moving data, extremely high volume, you want to just land it as quickly as possible. So again, there's basic transformations around tagging, filtering, but none of the stuff that you'd see in the ETL, ELT side of the cloud data integration. Okay, so let me, it also does continuous or batch loading as well, and we do have incremental updates and that sort of thing. Okay, so talking a little bit more about our ELT, the advanced pushdown capabilities, right? So a couple of key points here. What we see generally, we benchmark this, is about 50 times faster to use pushdown processing than it is to try to use kind of the native ETL engine outside of the data store. So there's so much optimization's gone into Databricks SQL, you get a tremendous performance gain by pushing it down to the ecosystem. Again, we are using Databricks SQL. We were one of the early partners kind of leaning in and investing on Databricks SQL last year as it was even coming through preview and that sort of thing. And the idea here is to really optimize performance and optimize cost. So let's see. I think and it's a pretty straightforward option. It's a simple option in our user experience to say, hey, I want to push this down, right? So again, you're not touching code, you're just using the same library of pre-built transformations that we've developed over many years and bring a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge of data management to the hands of your end users. Okay, so that's kind of the core side of data loading and those elements. I do want to talk about something that we announced this week, which I think is really cool. Hopefully you guys do as well. You probably saw little cards on your seats here. So one of the things that we announced at the Data and AI Summit here is what we call our free data loader, right? So this is a 100% free data loader. It's designed to, there's no infrastructure. We host all the infrastructure, no IT intervention required to set it up. And it's designed to really load from different SaaS applications, right? So and the idea here is it's very simple, easy to use, easy to sign up. And Informatica, we look at this as, this is one element of our platform, right, that we bring to bear, and really it's bringing the power of our cloud native solutions to every single Databricks user out there, whether it's a small company, large company, departmental user, it's enterprise IT. It's really creating a lot of value and helping customers get up and running very quickly on that first step, which is get the data from A to B. And a couple of features that I want to point out. So today it's about 30 data sources. Things like Salesforce, Zendesk, things like that. We're going to keep adding more throughout the course of the year. And again, it's 100% free, no capacity limit, no infrastructure required. So zero DevOps, it's globally available. We have regions in EMEA and APJ, so wherever you are in the world, it's available, and it's an easy 3-step wizard, right? So we've really tried to simplify for the most common options. That being said, there are advanced options available. So we can do incremental updates, it does schema drift, right? It handles all those sorts of things. So once you set it up, it's going to be pretty robust and keep running for you on an ongoing basis. So again, encourage you, if you have data loading needs, you have colleagues who are interested in this, this is a 100% free service, and please do let them know about it. Again, this is the sign-up page and the QR code that's on the cards as well, in case anyone wants to pop a phone up real fast. But you can also come to our booth and check it out as well if you want to see a live demo. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about data governance side of things, right? So, and I do think, this is where a lot of data initiatives they either live or die on data governance, right? And the idea here is we've got this community of folks, right? You've got your IT teams, folks owning your data systems, and their job is to provide data to the business. And then you have these other functions, the CPO, data privacy, they have an interest in managing data, right? They want to make sure data is protected, it's being used appropriately. And then you have your CDO and data professionals who are also managing data. They're typically preparing the data, they're enriching the data, they're getting it ready for the business side. And then you've got your data consumers, right? So there's this rich community of folks who need to touch your whole data lifecycle or your data supply chain. And the challenge is, and we talked about earlier, similar challenge here is that, again, so many different data sources are out there, right? And these different groups have different perspectives on what's in those sources, what they care about. And the whole idea is, well, how do you create the right kind of connective tissue, if you will, to bring this community together in a really efficient and scalable way? So we think about a lot of companies are starting to look and saying, hey, well, how do we solve these challenges, these different groups? And we see a lot of customers get into a situation where they start to piecemeal the problem, right? And go to the expo hall floor, there's lots of folks who have individual bits and pieces of this story, right? But a lot of times it's up to you to have to put those things together and make sure they work together, and those things are kind of changing on a rapid basis, whereas our focus is really to try to create a holistic solution for data governance that serves the needs of all these personas and really helps connect them and create the workflow and the life cycle between them. So when we think about what we're looking to do with our data governance, it's really bringing together the metadata of the physical data and the data catalog together with the business context, right? The semantic meaning of the data, also the descriptive elements of just a plain English language. What does this thing mean? How do I use it? That rich context that a data steward can provide to an end user. And ultimately providing collaboration around it, such that, again, as I mentioned, if someone wants, what we have in our experience, and you can come see a demo of this at the booth, they can come into our data marketplace and say, hey, I see this data set, I can see who the owners are, I want to go ahead and request access, let me file a ticket. Great, this has sensitive data, I need to accept XYZ policy, gets routed to the owner gets to approve it, and once they approve it, data gets provisioned, right? That's the kind of life cycle that an enterprise really needs to make sure that the data is being used appropriately, but at the same time, not making governance an inhibitor of adoption and inhibitor of use of data. So again, just to highlight what we're talking about when we talk about data governance is we're really focused on organizations easily defining data governance, discovering the data you need to put in place, measuring the quality of data. So data quality is another big component of governance as well, and ultimately delivering that data to end users. So again, we talk about the catalog itself, data quality, and data marketplace are kind of the three components that we think about what users are interacting with. It's really those kind of three things. So again, the idea here is a rich catalog of metadata, context that helps make decisions and have trust and confidence in data, which ultimately translates into scaling of data adoption. Okay, and just to kind of tie it all together here with a couple of reference architectures, and then we'll have plenty of time for some questions if you guys have it. So this is what we see as a very common pattern, right? And all the orange boxes are what Informatica is looking to help do. And our goal here is to really go end to end, right? It's to be that supply chain around your lakehouse. And so most customers are deploying kind of multiple zones, if you will, right? Different levels of fidelity of data. And typically, we're using that mass ingestion to load data until it's called, a bronze zone, for lack of a better term, whatever you decide to call it in your organization. And then we get into preparing the data, and we start to cleanse it. And so that promotes data from the silver zone to a gold zone, and ultimately becomes the data that is made for available for interactive analytics, right? It's delivered to applications. And that whole process involves ETL, ELT, it involves data quality and cleansing, and getting that data ready. And then typically, we're exposing it, in this case, we're using Databricks SQL as the SQL query layer. That's typically what's done, and that exposes to end users. And across the board, end to end here, data governance is in play, right? It's always there. It's going all the way from source, all the way to consumption, which again, it's all about enabling scale and trust in the data assets that your organization needs to drive transformation. Okay, and the last slide I really want to show here is, this is more of the physical architecture. One thing I mentioned earlier, unique to our IDMC, or Intelligent Data Management Cloud platform, is what we call the secure agent. So when you think about Informatica, we have a rich collection of engines, if you will, for transforming data. We have our ETL engine, ELT engines. We have application integration, does real-time point-to-point integration. We can do EDI integration. All these are different modes. And these engines are available in secure agents. And you can take the secure agent, and we have secure agents like for the data loader that we're hosting in our cloud environment, but in a lot of enterprise customers, they don't want their data to leave their environment, right? They want it to be in their security context. And also it's more performant to run the processing near where the data is, right? Cuts down on ingress, egress charges, all that kind of stuff. So you can actually take the secure agent and deploy clusters of secure agents that can scale up and scale down in your context. They could be in your cloud VPC, they could be on premises. The nice thing about on-premises, you don't have to open your firewall up, right? Because the secure agent reaches outbound, registers itself with what's called the mothership, which is our control plane, and that's how it gets all its instructions about the data processing it needs to do. So this means you can take our SaaS experience and manage fully on-premise workloads, you can manage cloud workloads, cloud to cloud, so you can manage pretty much every combination of workload and data movement you'd want to look at. So again, the secure agent architecture is very unique to Informatica, that we can manage these kind of distributed workloads very efficiently, and again, give you the ease of use of SaaS on top of all this. Okay, so that's most of what I want to cover. So again, really thank you guys for joining me late in the afternoon. Hopefully it's a good overview of the platform, and please do check out the free data loader. If you want to learn more about our solutions, we have a microsite on our website /Databricks, and our booth is here for the next hour or so, so please come grab a glass of wine and come see us as well. So again, thanks so much. Happy to take any questions.
So for the governance, can you do like push down security like into Databricks to like secure objects and columns and stuff like that?
Yeah, so in terms of using the native capabilities for the operational governance is kind of how I talk about that. So we actually use, so we have a thing called application integration that allows us to connect REST API calls. So we can connect that up and actually push that stuff down. So one of the things that we're going to be doing in the coming couple quarters is doing more work with Unity and looking at adding those operational controls as well. But today you can do it through our application integration, make those API calls. So you can kind of wire that whole workflow up and actually do the provisioning by effectively granting access.
This question is related to compute.
Okay.
So in order to ingest data into the Delta Lake, does it require the Databricks cluster to get started for the engine to ingest data?
Yeah, so we ingest directly today to the Databricks SQL engine. So you just need to have the SQL endpoint, right? You don't need a jobs cluster or anything like that. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was in our spring release. We removed any of the job cluster dependencies, so it's all Databricks SQL directly. And that data loader works the same way, by the way. Question in the back.
Just an add-on to that, can it also create a Delta table? Yes, it can load into this Delta table through the SQL endpoint. Can it also create one?
Yes, I believe it does. I don't know, is Eddie in here? Eddie, you can answer that one, sorry.
It does. Okay, thanks.
He said yes. It's all right. You got the best seat in the house there. You're good. Yeah, Eddie actually is our solution architect director for our Databricks partnership. So the hard questions will go to him. But anyone else? Okay, awesome. Well, again, thanks so much for the time. I'll just hang around for a few minutes if you have any other questions, and hopefully we'll see you guys at our booth. Thanks again.